I know they haven't made a whole big deal out of it, and you may not be paying attention, but apparently next year there's a presidential election. Yeah, actually, that's all they're focusing on right now, it appears. Well, we also have a third of the Senate up for reelection, along with the entire House, as we do every 2 years. And frankly, the race for the majority rule in the Senate is probably just as important as the race for the White House. And there are some seats that are definitely in play, including the all important Commonwealth of Virginia. Senator Tim Kaine, former running mate of Hillary Clinton, is up for reelection. And one of the men vying for the Republican nomination joins us now. He's a familiar face as he just ran for Congress in 2022 in Virginia. He's Hung Cao, retired captain from the U.S. Navy, and now ready to take on Tim Kaine. Mr. Cao, thanks for joining us.
Larry, thank you so much for having me.
Would you agree that the majority in the Senate is, all right, maybe it's not the White House, but if a new Republican president is going to get anything done, he needs that majority?
Oh, absolutely. But let's just look in the worst case scenario also. We need to have a strong legislative branch that will hold the executive branch accountable. And that's not what they're doing right now. They're just letting Joe Biden do whatever he wants, forgive debt forgiveness and just thumb his nose at the judicial branch.
Yeah. Well, actually, that brings up an interesting point right now. There's a lot of stuff coming out of the House right now that's just stalled in the Senate because the Democrats have the majority. And if an impeachment proceeding proceeds for either Merrick Garland or Secretary Mayorkas or even the president, it's assumed that the Senate will barely look at it and certainly vote it down. I mean, I know you haven't had a chance to look at all of it, but based on your understanding of how Mayorkas and Merrick Garland and the president is carrying out their office, would you be open to impeachment proceedings yourself?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we have to hold people accountable, right? They're accountable to the Constitution of the United States when they're not providing for the common defense. We have an invasion in the southern border, and not just from people from South America and Central America. We're talking about people from Yemen, from China, and
Yeah.
you and I know geography. They're not in the southern border.
Yeah, your potential opponent, Senator Tim Kaine, he always tries to run as a moderate. He's on the Armed Services Committee. He pretends that he's very interested in national defense and the military. And yet, with all of the incursions we've seen from China in the South China Sea, and now what we're seeing over in Alaska with joint military exercises with Russia, he's silent. He's got nothing to say. How is that possible? He's got some seniority there in the Senate, and he's just watching it go by.
No, you're absolutely right. He's just he's the easy-go-lucky guy that looks like he plays both sides. But if you look at the way he votes, it's very indicative. And what happened this past weekend with the 11 ships from both the Chinese and the Russian navies, it's pretty scary, right? I mean, they're right on our doorsteps, and no one cares. No one cares because they're not afraid of Joe Biden.
Yeah. As a retired captain in the Navy, how do you view the threat right now in the Pacific, and how our allies over there are basically pretty threatened by China, and they've got to see a strong America, I would think. Otherwise, they're going to start acquiescing to Beijing.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, we saw that in the Middle East, right? I mean, once the Biden administration kind of stopped all the Abraham Accord deals, they turned to China, and they're going to turn to the strongest countries. I mean, we've abandoned 6 U.S. embassies in 2.5 years, and so if we abandon that, then what else are we going to abandon? We abandoned Afghanistan as a country altogether.
So talk to me about how you view the political landscape in Virginia right now. You had a bit of an uphill fight in a district that is increasingly leaning Democrat, and you fell short. But yet at the same time, Governor Youngkin has soaring popularity statewide. Is your race for Senate, is that going to be different than your race for the House?
Oh, it sure is. I mean, let's look at the House. We took a very suburban and a very blue district where Joe Biden won by 19 points. We moved it down to less than 6 points. So that's a 13% delta. And if you look at Virginia as a whole, Joe Biden only won Virginia by 10%. So if you do the math there, especially down southwestern Virginia and Bristol and Wise, I mean, they're very strong Republican outposts, as well as Roanoke, where my in-laws lived for 30 years. We're going to look at a pretty strong, victory. And people who say, "Oh, Virginia is blue," well, the last 3 Virginia statewide elections were won by Republicans: J.C. Miaris, Winsome Sears, and Glenn Youngkin.
Yeah, and their opponents in that statewide race in 2021 tried very hard to link those Republicans to Donald Trump. This is coming off the events of January 6th and the 2020 election, coming out of the pandemic. As you mentioned, they won, but the race really was a proxy for President Trump. Assuming that he does get the nomination, are you prepared to sort of maneuver that narrative the way the DC press will cover it and the way Virginians might look at it? Because President Trump has never won in the state of Virginia.
No, he hasn't. But I mean, the growing sentiment is that no matter whether you like him or not, I always say, hey, the only person who really needs to like Donald Trump is Melania. But you have to look at the policies that made America strong. You have to look at us being energy independent. And I think a lot of people will just overlook the fact that, hey, I might not like this guy or his mean tweets, but doggone it, I really like what he's done for this country.
You know, there's a growing drumbeat out there right now for somebody, for Republicans, especially Republican policymakers and thought leaders who were just looking for a more competitive race in the primary. They're saying, listen, we thought DeSantis was going to give Trump a run for his money. Now they're looking at Governor Youngkin. The Virginia governor has the highest approval rating across the country. And they're suggesting that maybe he should get into the presidential race. Do you have an opinion on that? I know you know the governor very well.
Oh, I know. I mean, he's a great governor, and he's done a lot of things for the state. I mean, it's a long way away. It's 14 months away. But like I said earlier, we have to have a strong
legislative branch. It's a long way away. You're in the race. Your race is 14 months away.
Yeah, I know. And that's what I'm concentrating on right now. I mean, I've got to win the primary first, right? You might have the best rabbit stew recipe, but you still have to catch the rabbit first. And so we have to win the primary. And like I said, we need to have a strong legislative branch that holds the executive branch accountable. And so that's why I'm running for Senate, because we need to have people that believe in this country, that also have done things for this country. We have too many bureaucrats and lifelong politicians. We need engineers, scientists, entrepreneurs, veterans. We need people to fight for this country and not just give a lot of lip service.
You got to catch the rabbit before the rabbits do. Is that a Navy saying? You got to be hanging around with Marines too much. Tell me about your military background and what you learned in 25 years in the United States military that you're bringing to the table here on this race, something that Tim Kaine can't even come close to matching.
Well, I have the typical background. I was born in Vietnam, raised in West Africa. I went to the most prestigious high school in America, Thomas Jefferson High School for Science Technology. I went to the United States Naval Academy. I have a master's in physics from Naval Postgraduate School, and had fellowships at Harvard and MIT. So just normal, typical stuff. But
you're a real dummy there, aren't you? I don't know. You're not going to be able to stand up to Tim Kaine in a debate.
No, but I paid back this country with everything I did. I paid back in 25 years in special operations with combat operations in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Somalia. But I'm not done fighting for this country or Virginia, and so that's where we're going to bring it to Tim Kaine, because here's a person who's held various offices for 30 years, but no one can put a thumb on what he's done except he got stuck in I-95 with a bottle of Dr. Pepper.
Oh, right, during the snowstorm. I forgot about that. Oh, that is the biggest headline Tim Kaine has made in the last 4 years.
Yes.
That's hilarious.
Else, right? I mean, no one else knows what he's done for Virginia or for this country.
Yeah. Listen, this is going to be an interesting race going forward. And I think that a lot of people assume that Tim Kaine is just that same moderate sort of, he was the governor of Virginia. And if you look at what he stood for with regard to abortion, national security, funding the military, lowering taxes, this is not the same Tim Kaine. Joe Biden always likes to say, this isn't your father's Republican Party. But this is not your father's Tim Kaine.
No, you're right. But look at his time as governor. I mean, he really didn't achieve a lot. And so, I mean, I don't know if you guys remember, but he was supposed to be Obama's running mate, but he got passed over for Joe Biden. I mean, how bad do you have to be passed over for Joe Biden as vice president?
Ooh. Oh, that may be the toughest insult of all. I get you, Tim Kaine. You weren't good enough to be Joe Biden. Dang. All right, we'll have to leave it there. Hung Cao, tell us your website if any of our viewers want to support the race.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's hungforva.com. So HUNG for VA.com, and you can learn all about us. And all I'm asking your viewers is throw in $5, because we have over 8,300 donors in just the last 3 weeks. And that's the grassroots movement that's pushing us forward in Virginia.
That's how we win the Senate. And by the way, if Hung Cao is competitive in his race next year, you can better believe Virginia will be in play for the Electoral College in that Presidential race. That's right. There is a presidential race. Thank you for joining us, sir. We'll be back with more O'Connor tonight.